We are in the midst of what is traditionally known as stewardship season, which often means, oh, you're going to talk about money, which we are. But also, we're going to talk about what stewardship looks like, and not just stewardship of money, but resources and gifts and skills and gifts and all those kinds of things, and then how we might respond to the wonderful work that God is already doing in our world, in our church, through individuals and through communities, and we're going to try to practice generosity. And what if generosity is how we practice trust? Our stewardship theme this year is what if. And our question this morning is, what if generosity is how we practice trust? There's this story that you may have heard before. I know I've told it 600,000 times in various contexts. But when I was about 15 years old, my parents and I were driving to church in Dallas, Texas, and we drove by the old Tom Thumb, which is a grocery store. And it was closed down. And there was a car sitting in the parking lot, and the hood was open, and there were car parts everywhere, and it said Oklahoma or bust. There was like a cardboard sign that said Oklahoma or bust. And my dad turned the corner and came back into the parking lot. And I looked at my dad, because I'm 15 and I know everything. Nothing's changed. And I said, Dad, that's a scam. That's not, they don't need your money. And my dad pulled up next to the guy, introduced himself, and gave him some money. And it was a 15-second interaction, and we just got back on the road, and I was like, Dad, you're such an idiot. I mean, I didn't say that to my dad, but this is what I was thinking. I did tell him that he just got scammed out of like $20, which he could have been given to me, which I would have used in a much more responsible way. And my dad said something that has stuck with me forever, and he kind of like brushes it off, but I think this is such an important thing. He said, I felt called to give that money to that guy. What he does with it is between him and God. And I thought, well, you're an idiot. That's dumb. Like, you're so naive. You just got taken, old man, because you're 15 and you know everything. Or at least I was. I don't know about y'all. And so a couple weeks pass, and we are coming home from church. And we go home a different way. We decided to stop for lunch, or just, I don't know what we were doing, but we decided to go home a different way, in a different part of Dallas. And we pulled up to wherever we were going, and across the street was the same guy, same car parts, same sign. And I said, told you so. And to my dad's credit, I don't remember him getting angry or frustrated or annoyed. He said, I felt called to give that money to that guy a couple weeks ago. What he does with it is between him and God. I don't feel called to give him money today. And I always think about this as we think about gifts and our gifts of time and energy and relationship and money and experience and the gifts that we want to give. We see an outcome that we want to happen when we give those gifts. But we don't actually have any control over whether or not those gifts are used in the way that we want them to be used. Even if my mom wants me to wear that shirt that my grandma got me for Christmas, to Christmas dinner, I mean, I have to wear it that day, but then, eventually I can put it in the closet. But as we talked about last week, God created everything. All of it is God's, all of it. And we are stewards of that gift. So if God is in control, then stewardship is a creational claim. Everything belongs to God. We are not owners who choose to give a portion away. We are managers of things that were never ours. This is the Reformed doctrine of stewardship, the Reformed tradition of which the Presbyterian Church is a part. And it's, I think, more demanding and also more freeing than any cool theme that we can come up with. If everything already belongs to God, then giving is not a sacrifice of what we have earned. It is an act of acknowledgement, a liturgical gesture, out loud in the form of money or time, saying, I know who this belongs to. In our reading today, the cheerful giver is not someone who feels good about their giving plan. The word is hilaris. Do you know what word comes from that word? Hilarious, exuberant, free. God loves a hilarious giver. And that freedom comes not from an overabundance, because Lord knows that not everybody has enough, and certainly some people have too much. This freedom is not a vision, doesn't come strictly from the abundance of money, but from a conviction that God, who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food, will supply and multiply your seed for sowing. Our giving is not based on our surplus. Our giving is based on God's sufficiency. It is so easy to look around the world and see scarcity. Not enough, not for me, not for you. And I often want us to take a step back and see that the abundant life that God has granted us, and how we can steward that life so that all may bask in its abundance. When we think about abundance, when we think about how God is working, how we are becoming aware or acknowledging the work that God is already doing in our, as Kim talked about, the race to 160. The race to 160 is a vision. May 15th, 2029 is our 160th anniversary as a church. So this is part of our vision of leading into that history that has come, that is long. It's nearly as old as Oregon itself. This history of mission, this history of shared space, this history of hospitality, this history of frugality. We have intentions. We have 3 intentions that we're focusing on. The first is to become a safe place for spiritual seekers. And the second is to become a community where people talk about God. Now you think about, this is a church. People talk about God, right? Maybe. We are intending to make it genuinely, casually, unselfconsciously normal for people in our community to talk about our faith, their doubts, and where they've noticed God lately. Not just me, not just the elders, but everybody's. And these practices are not about programming. They're about us creating small habits and permission structures. As many of you might know, I'm more of a forgiveness than permission person. So you have permission to talk about God and how God is active or inactive, or how you feel honestly about God. You have permission. Because if God can't take your complaints, it's not a God I want to worship. I do not worship a weak God who gets up in their feelings when you get mad or when you tell them you know better than they do. I worship a God who already loves me, who knows me, and who continues to work with me even when I may be actively pushing back. One of the ways that we will do this and keep track of this is part of y'all's work. Every meeting, every gathering, committees, session, ministry teams, prayer groups, any meeting, gathering of people, starts with the question, where have you noticed God lately? There are no right answers. There are no wrong answers. There's no theology police, just a regular, honest check-in. We believe that this is how we can build a habit before we ask it of those outside of our community. We're going to share reflection questions every week. So today we had those questions for you to talk about. We're going to try, now this is subject to me, so hopefully Ashley will help. We'll have a couple of questions each week connected with the sermon. So when you go out, you can answer them privately. You can talk to me about them. You can post them on our social medias. And we're going to see where it brings us. But we're going to make sure that we have those resources available to you. And we're going to make spaces for at least 4 stories a year in worship. So if many of you come from other traditions where testimony is an important part of the life of faith, and I believe testimony is an important part of life of faith, even if I'm a Presbyterian. And so we are going to offer opportunities for people to share their stories. Someone other than me. It could be, and we want it to be real. It could be a struggle, a turning point, a question they're carrying. It doesn't have to be resolved. And these moments will hopefully do more to open up our conversation around God than any program ever will. One of the things that I keep thinking about as we have these conversations, as we open these opportunities up in places that may have felt like they weren't safe to have these conversations, to be real, to be honest about where you are or where you find God or where not you don't find God. One of those things that needs to happen first is trust. By giving of ourselves, the staff and I and the session and the volunteers, we give of our time and effort and our experience. We hope that engenders trust, not only with you, but with the community. And trust takes a long, 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 long time to build. And it can be shattered in a moment. But part of generosity is how we show trust. So when you sign up and pledge your financial support, you are trusting that we are going to do what God has called us to do, what we said we are going to do. When you volunteer your hours and time, you are trusting that we will have some offering and that the work will have a positive impact on you and the community. So we want to operate, the church and its leadership want to operate from a position of trust. And if you've looked around the world, trust is probably the most scarce resource we have. If I can't trust the elected officials to have my back, if I can't trust the wealthy to use their money for good, if I can't trust my neighbor for not steal from me, if I can't trust myself, how can I be vulnerable? How can I experience the abundance of God? So this intention of talking about God, this intention of stewardship is about trust. Those pledging units, as we call them, those people that pledge of their money and their time and their prayers, you are engendering us with trust. And we are trusting that we are coming along, working together so that we can keep the lights on, so that we can make sure we have food, so we can house thousands of houseless people during the winter, so that we can host beautiful worship services in the mornings and funerals of remembrance and celebration of those that have passed. We can have a space for little friends, Montessori. We have an opportunity to share our space with the Salem Poetry Project. All of these things, everyone that enters this building is received from a position of trust. And so we hope that your generosity is a function of your trust in God, in our listening to God, and our trust that we actually are better together, that we actually hold each other accountable to loving our neighbors as ourselves, and God knows us fully and loves us unconditionally. All of these things we live into, and they are hilarious because trusting in this space at this time is exuberant, is zealous, and flies in the face of all of the hate and scarcity that we hear around us. Love God with everything that you have because God has already granted that to you. Let us remember that we are stewards of God's world, and let us continue to hold that carefully, exuberantly, and joyfully. May it be so. Amen.